Welcome to Four Questions, our webcast where we are fortunate enough to have some interesting conversations with various leaders across different industries. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Dan McNeil, the head of engineering for iTech Media, as well as a recognized leader with a keen interest in people management, diversity inclusion in teams, and mental health awareness in the workplace. In today's episode, we turn our attention specifically to leadership development. Dan, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me here.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you. So thank you for joining us. Question one, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Great. Okay, so continuous professional development is widely accepted in the world of work, especially pertaining to leadership development. Dan, how do you identify specific skills that you want to prioritize for further development?
I think there's two kind of skills that I look to develop. And one is the simple stuff I don't know. So that is, if somebody mentions something in a meeting that actually it's, could be a tech I've not heard of, it could be an idea I've not heard of, it could be something that I kind of heard of but don't really know. And so I notice what the people around me are talking about and use that as a way for me to go and say, what should I find out about? I think the other part of that for me is it's important for me as a leader to have the vulnerability to say, I don't know. It's absolutely fine for somebody to mention a technology I've not heard of because there's millions of technologies I've not heard of. It's fine for me to say, oh, I didn't know that AWS could do that thing. Can you tell me a bit more about it? So that's one side of it. The other side of it is the softer skills side of leadership. So that's dealing with people, having difficult conversations, managing scenarios you've not come across before. And I found that in every single role I've had, there's been at least one situation that has come up in people management, which you could not foresee, which you could never dream of, and which neither you nor anybody else around you has seen before. The ability for new things to happen is amazing. And for me, the barometer of whether it's something I need to learn to develop is how secure in my ability to do that do I feel? Mm-hmm. Is this something where I feel like I'm struggling or I don't feel confident in my ability to have this kind of conversation or lead this kind of coaching discussion? And if there's something that I feel less confident in, that to me is a signal that the way to get more confident in it is to learn more about it and maybe do it more.
I love what you said in terms of being vulnerable, because as leaders, we have this conception or perception that we're looked upon as this oracle of all information. And it's actually okay to not know everything. It's okay to not have every skill. So yeah, the vulnerable leader, I think that's something that we should all aspire to.
Yeah, I was having a discussion with some people today about the idea of open Q&A sessions with leadership teams, leadership teams of companies or of tribes, if you're in the Spotify model or whatever. And some people are quite anxious at the idea that somebody might ask them a question they don't know the answer to during a live Q&A. And I'm fine, because if somebody asks me a question to which I don't know the answer, I'll say, I don't know the answer. Yeah. I'll find out and come back to you, or I don't really want to give an off the cuff answer to that because it's quite a complicated subject. So let me formulate something and come back to you, which takes all the facts or whatever. And I think that it'd be a much better place if leaders allowed themselves to be vulnerable in those kind of situations.
Absolutely. Great. All right, let's go for question two. This is 4 questions. So Dan, given your rich and varied experience in leading others, do you have any examples of those defining moments in your own leadership development journey?
I do. I'm going to go right back to the start of it for the first one. And I came out of university with a maths degree. I'd done a little bit of coding as part of the course, but it wasn't real coding. It was, it was literally written in BASIC or Pascal or something like that, and it was just implement a very simple algorithm. And so I came into the world of work, and the first thing I did was go on a C++ course, which I realised dates me quite considerably, but went on a C++ course, and then I was a developer. I was like, okay, I'm a developer. I never really enjoyed development. I enjoyed taking a problem, breaking the problem down into its constituent bits and looking at how could I come up with a logical algorithmic approach to make this thing happen or calculate this, but the actual code I could never really connect with. And I kind of struggled in my first job. I wasn't great. I wasn't performing brilliantly. I was outside London, and I think the excuse I used to leave was all my friends from university went to London. So I jumped on a train to London, had a job interview, and got myself a dev job in London because I was a dev. That's what I was doing. But I still wasn't great at it. And at the time, the leadership within the team could have just said, well, he's not a very good dev. But actually, what they did was allow me to pick up other responsibility. Initially, it was release management. It was putting together the configuration of the releases that go to customers and working with the customers' CM team to get those releases onto the FTP site and off the FTP site and whatever. And gradually that went more and more into coordination roles and problem solving roles at kind of people or process level rather than the code. And so for me, that's a very powerful lesson that if you have somebody that's underperforming, don't write them off, because if those people hadn't seen some potential in me to do something other than dev, I would still be a mediocre dev now. And I wouldn't be happy because I wouldn't be enjoying it. The other example is skipping forward many years, and I've been in an organization a long, long time, and I was feeling like I wanted to do more, and I was feeling a little bit, itchy is probably a good way to put it. And so I applied for a job in the sales team. I'm not a salesperson. I'm good at building relationships, but I convinced myself it's what I wanted. And it was considered such a shoo-in that people were talking as though it was already happening. The interview was a formality and whatever. And I went through the interview, and then I didn't get the job. Somebody else did. And at the time, I was utterly devastated because this was the thing that I really wanted, and everybody had been kind of presumed was going to happen. It's like, well, what happens now? Because everybody's presumed you're moving over there. And actually, I didn't want it. I didn't need it. I was hungry for something, and I convinced myself that's what it was. And actually, it wasn't. And so I'm immensely grateful to the person who made the decision not to offer me the job, because that must have been a really hard decision for him, because he knew how invested in it I was at the time. It's been a really hard thing to tell me. But actually, it's one of the best things anybody's ever done for me, because it stopped me going off down a track of my career I didn't really want to do with hindsight.
That is so interesting. Great examples, Dan. And what I loved about what you said prior is the fact that leaning into skills that exist in the business elsewhere. Like you said, if you'd never moved along, you'd be stuck in a mediocre role and probably never have thrived. It's not up to us to have every skill and behavior there is. Let's leverage against the ones that we do have and develop others, or lean on our teammates.
Yeah, and you do see people getting written off because they have a bad quarter, because they have a bad month, because somebody fails to deliver something. You see people getting written off. And if that had been applied, I would have been written off when I was 22. And I wouldn't be doing this job now. So I can't write people off because they're in the wrong job. If somebody's not performing, it means they're in the wrong job. It doesn't mean they're a bad person.
Absolutely. All right, question 3. Now, Dan, I'm sure you may agree that efforts to develop leadership skills don't always pay off. What pitfalls have you encountered with the efforts to develop leadership skills?
Biggest pitfall I fell into, and I fell hard, was trying to change the kind of leader I was to suit the environment. So learning from people around me, learning from the leaders around me, and trying to be more like them rather than trying to achieve the same things they achieve. I let's be blunt about this. For the first 10, 15 years of my career, every leader was a confident, outgoing, loud-voiced, straight white man. That's what a leader was. Mm. And as well as that, they were non-emotional.
Yeah.
I had a leader for a long time who told me that I could never get further in my career because I was emotionally invested in the team and decisions I was making. And so I tried really hard to switch that off and say, I'm only going to make decisions based on rational evidence. And it's taken me a long time to find the confidence to say, I'm not going to do that, because part of leadership is making decisions on partial evidence. That's one of the things you always get asked in interviews. What are you going to do if you don't have all the evidence to make a decision? You can't possibly make an entirely evidence-based decision. You have to fill the gap with something. You can call it experience. You can call it knowledge. You can call it, you shouldn't say gut feeling, because that's, prone to bias, but you have to use something to fill that gap in the evidence and make that decision, because you can't possibly make it entirely rationally. And it was immensely freeing for me to start to be able to talk in future roles after that about people's feelings, how the team going to feel about that piece of information. I think the other thing I fall into, and I can trace this back to stuff outside work and stuff many years ago, but also in work, is I think I take failures too hard. I think I set expectations on myself to not make mistakes. I don't think that's expectations on other people, but as a leader, when you've got so many people looking to you, and whether you like it or not, if you're a leader, you will have people looking to you for direction, for inspiration, for cues for their behavior, for all these kind of things. If you make a mistake, you're doing it kind of in front of a load of people, and it's very easy to beat yourself up about that mistake. Yeah. And I still do, to a certain extent. I remember actually only a few months ago, we had a new starter who I interviewed, and had gone through all the paperwork and worked on the offer with the talent team and got it in. And then I announced in the team meeting that this person was starting, and I forgot their name. In the team meeting, their name just went out of my mind. I was beating myself up about that for weeks, because I was like, that is so disrespectful, that is so awful. This person was even a referral of somebody in the team, so I'm like, oh, what's that person thinking that I've forgotten their friend's name at this exact moment? So I'm still prone to that, but leaders are people. Leaders are going to make mistakes. Leaders are going to say the wrong thing. Leaders are going to upset people. Leaders are going to forget somebody's name when you really shouldn't. And that's what I'm still working on, because I still think I beat myself up too much about failures.
Mm. Oh, bless you. Do you remember his name now?
It was a woman, actually.
Me with my bias, yeah.
Sorry. I do, and it is a name I'm never going to forget until my dying day now.
Bless you. All right, Dan, it's ready. Are you ready for your bingo buzz question?
Well, I'm slightly nervous, but let's do it.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm nervous too. I'm nervous for you. I'm just joking. Right. So Dan has no idea what we're going to ask him. And your bingo buzz question today is this. Leaders are born, not reared. True or false?
False. I think I'm a pretty good leader now, but everything I do in leadership has come from inspirational people. It's come from learning. It's come from self-reflection. It's come from forcing myself to try things. I know in situations like this and in work, I come across as a confident, outgoing, self-assured person, and I'm really not. A lot of the behaviours I exhibit in leadership are learned behaviours, and it doesn't make them inauthentic. It doesn't make them any less valid. It doesn't make them any less good. But anybody can be a leader if that's what they want to be. And it's much harder for some people based on, the demographics. We know that some people coming from different backgrounds, of different genders, different races, we know that there's many more obstacles for them to overcome to get to leadership. We need to fix that. But there's nothing inherent in anybody, which means they can't become a leader if that's what they want to do.
Love your answer, love your perspective, and love your wisdom, Dan. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Brilliant. Well, we hope to see you again very soon, but otherwise, cheers for now.
Cheers.